Thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Aric DiLalla.
Phil, great to be with you again.
It is. It's nice to be with you here. The off-season program wrapped up a week ago, but we keep on going.
That's right. It feels like we just recorded last week's episode.
Sometimes it feels like that, and other times it doesn't feel like that.
That's right.
And this time it feels like that.
It feels like that.
Yeah. Eric, I realized something very funny the other day. I was looking at my watch.
Yeah.
And on the back of it, it was a wedding gift. And on the back of it, there's an inscription.
Uh-huh.
It has, and so we were talking about this over lunch. You were not there. I don't know where you were. I know it was lunchtime, but you weren't there. I didn't know what was going on. And I was like, oh, yeah, my wife had a nice little inscription. She gave it to me on our wedding day. It has our wedding date. And then underneath it says, my everything. And then
that's good.
Swanson was there. He's not here for the show.
Weird.
But he was there, and he was like, you're kidding. What does it really say? And I was like, no, this is my everything.
That's funny.
Yeah, that is funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where's my watch?
I know, yeah. It makes you think, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it just sunk in, I don't know how these things
happened.
work.
Yeah. Kind of magic.
Ways. Yeah, exactly. So, Eric, it might be the off season, and some people might be like, what are these guys going to talk about?
That's a good question.
There's always something.
That's true.
There's always something. Eric, I thought today we'd dive in and talk about this Broncos roster. On the offensive side of the ball, on paper, there's a lot of talent there. The wide receiving room, loaded. Running back room, loaded. The O-line is coming together after some nice offseason additions. Year 2 for Russ here in Denver now. I was wondering, with Sean Payton coming in, Eric, how does this year's talent on the roster for this Broncos team compare to some of his great teams there in New Orleans?
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
comparison is a thief of joy, Phil.
That is true. They do say that. But it's also kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's also content.
It kind of makes you think.
Yeah.
Hey, especially it got me thinking when Cortland Sutton said, hey, I'm watching a lot of tape on Michael Thomas.
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's like, Michael Thomas. Jerry Jeudy, Michael Thomas. I was like,
2 Michael Thomases.
Yeah, this team might have 2.
That could be crazy.
Yeah, 2 is better than 1.
That's right.
It made me think, hey, is Sean Payton about to take over the most talented team on paper that he's had?
Wow.
Kind of makes you think a little bit. I thought we could get into it, Eric.
Let's do it.
I know that normally we do some YouTube comments. And that is a highlight of the show.
Yep.
We'll get back to those next week.
Okay.
Next week, YouTube comments. So keep
leave
them coming.
Still leave them.
We didn't ignore you.
We'll read 2 weeks worth of YouTube comments.
Yeah, we just thought that'd be nice.
Just save them up.
Yeah, it's just the off season. We're doing things a little different. We're kind of wild and crazy. What are some other ways that people can get involved in the show, and then we'll get to it?
Okay, yeah, Phil. You can leave an email at neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. We received an email last week when we were recording filled with vulgar hate messages, a lot of bad words. Don't send those. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, the hate.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested.
This is a happy
Send
place.
nice emails or questions to neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. Leave a voice message. Definitely don't be mean there. 707-NEUTRAL. Or Phil on Twitter. You can tweet us directly at Aric DiLalla with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH.
Non-traditional spelling.
That's right.
Or on the Broncos official YouTube page. And we'll get to those.
Leave them still, but don't fret if we don't read them this week.
Exactly. We'll read them next week.
Read.
Yep. Them next week. So.
A verb and it could be a name, I guess, right?
Yeah, a proper noun, I think.
Yeah.
Could be.
Good name, or what do you think?
It's sort of a traditional name, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
More non-traditional.
Right.
It's just sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Eric, anyway, let's get into our topic here for today's show, talking about the Broncos roster and how it compares to some of those Saints teams there.
Sure.
Eric, I'm just going to read off some Sean Payton stats here for you.
Let's do it.
In case you were wondering. 15 seasons as the Saints head coach, okay? 9 of those seasons, they made the playoffs.
Okay.
7 of those seasons, they won the division, okay? 161 career wins.
Wow.
That's 6th among active coaches.
Okay.
Okay. And a big reason why is those offenses were really good. The Saints finished top 9 in yards. Top 9.
A classic
Sort
stat.
of a specific
classic
kind of stat. They finished top 9 in the NFL in total yards in 13 of those 15 seasons.
Wow.
They finished top 5 in points in 9 of those 15 seasons.
That's wild.
So the offense is
Broncos, of course,
rolling.
for context, last year were 32nd.
Yes, in points. And in 2008 and 2009, the Saints led the NFL in points scored. So it was rolling. Let's just say it was rolling.
They were rolling.
It was rolling, and the numbers back it up. So we thought we'd look at 2 of those Saints teams that we thought were particularly good.
Okay.
Teams that went 13-3.
It's pretty good.
Okay. And we're going to compare the rosters to the Broncos roster.
Okay.
So how does that sound?
Sure.
Okay, so first up is the 2009 Saints team. They won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Who they beat?
They beat Peyton Manning.
Yeah, they did. That's
Sad.
we don't talk about that. Of course, Drew Brees was the quarterback there.
Sure.
70% completion that season
Okay.
for Drew Brees. 34 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, more than 4,300 yards passing. Pretty nice. Pretty
Unreal.
nice. He had some weapons in the backfield with him. Mike Bell, Pierre Thomas, and Reggie Bush. All of the running backs there combined more than 2,000 yards rushing that season. And then the pass catchers that year, Marquise Colston, 70 catches, 9 touchdowns. And then Jeremy Shockey, he was a big part of that team's 67 catches that year.
Wow.
So that team was That team was pretty good.
Good.
That was a
They
pretty
had
good team.
a decent defense that year, too. Good
Yeah,
defense.
of course. I mean, you got to have defense to win it all.
Yeah.
So, and that team won it all. So, should we do the 2018 team, or should we do it one team at a time?
I think you share the 2018 team, and then we
Okay.
talk in general.
2018, they also went 13-3.
Yep.
Really good.
Lost in the NFC Championship on that phantom pass interference call. Or
the
not
Rams.
phantom, the uncalled pass
It
interference.
was a call. It was called. It was
not called.
not called.
Yeah. Should have been
Should have
pass
been
interference.
called. Yeah.
We, of course, heard Mike Westhoff when he spoke to the media last week.
This is the assistant head coach for your Denver Broncos and
He
the
said
special
that-
teams.
He said he counts
specialist.
that as a championship.
Yeah, he did. He did say that.
Yeah.
Kind of funny how in your mind you just say that. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, that was
I like that.
It was yeah,
I like
me
that.
too. That year, Drew Brees completed 74% of his passes, and get this: 32 touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
Okay.
The whole year,
Wow.
nearly 4,000 yards passing that season, and a big reason why was Alvin Kamara. He was just insane that year. Nearly 900 yards rushing, 14 touchdowns. He also caught 81 passes for 4 touchdowns.
Was he Offensive Player of the Year?
That's a good question. If Ben Swanson was here,
You keep talking. I'll look it up.
he would have that information.
Michael Thomas,
for
of
you.
course, was Offensive Player of the Year the next year.
Yes. Mark Ingram that year, 645 yards rushing that year. Mark Ingram, in addition to Alvin Kamara. It's insane. 6 touchdowns rushing for them, so they combined for 20 touchdowns on the ground there. And then Michael Thomas, the aforementioned, 125 receptions for 9 touchdowns that year. So that 2018 team was really good as well.
That was kind of a down year for Michael Thomas because the next year he had almost 150 catches.
Yeah. Must be nice.
Mahomes won Offensive Player of the Year that year. Cheater.
Robbed. So those are some pretty good teams.
Really good.
Now, the question I think is, did Sean Payton make them that good? Do you know what I mean? I think that's your question.
Yeah.
Because we heard Vance Joseph a couple weeks ago say that Sean Payton is one of the best play callers in NFL history.
Yeah.
And he particularly noted how he keeps you off balance a little, like his rhythm keeps the defenses a little bit off balance. And he'll like bring up plays that you haven't seen the Saints run in more than a year. He'll throw one out in the fourth quarter that kind of just shakes things up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great play caller. You know, it's hard to, okay, so let's start with that Super Bowl team. It seems like probably, Colston was a 7th round pick who developed into a really good football player for them, but wasn't like a perennial type Pro Bowl guy. And then those running backs, obviously Reggie Bush, first round pick.
Pierre Thomas,
Pierre Thomas, a late round guy, undrafted or just late round,
I think maybe undrafted.
And Sean's told a story a lot about they had another running back who did not make the team. Pierre Thomas makes it instead. A really good football player. And then Shockey, of course, who I believe Sean had in New York with him when he was there.
Yeah. Out of the University of Miami.
The U. Another physical, tough, good football player.
Pierre Thomas undrafted.
Yeah. But when I look at this Broncos roster, I certainly think that you've got you've got a first-round receiver in Jerry Jeudy. You've got a second-round running back in Javonte Williams. You've got a third-round tight end in Greg Dulcich. And then you've got Courtland Sutton, who's shown he has a second-round pick who has Pro Bowl ability, who can go over 1,100 yards. So you've seen that from them, and then there's the pedigree for the other guys if you haven't seen it from them. So when I look at that group, I think, the Broncos probably compare pretty well, maybe even favorably to that group. Now, you got to have the offensive line do it. And the big question here, of course, in addition to offensive weapons, is at quarterback.
I think that's the biggest thing. It kind of makes it all run.
Right. If we had this conversation last year before the season, we would have said absolutely that Russell Wilson can play at that level.
Yep.
Because that's all you've seen from him from his career. And you talk about that 2018 season when Drew Brees had, 30-something touchdowns, 5 interceptions.
32 and 5.
Russell Wilson's had plenty of seasons where he's had 5 interceptions, 7 interceptions, 8, below 10 over and over. I mean, that was one of the things coming in, that Russell Wilson does not turn the football over. And last year, even, it was not a great year, but 15, I think, right? So it wasn't like he was throwing 3 picks a game and was just kind of all over the place, but it was higher than you're used to.
There was some throws you're like, why did he try to do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
There were a
couple that were not good. But yeah, I think if you believe that Sean Payton can get Russell Wilson back to where he was in Seattle, then you absolutely look at that Super Bowl group and say, I think the Broncos can be that type of group.
Yeah.
Now that group, led the NFL in scoring, right?
Yes, that team 13-3 led the NFL in points.
But I don't know if that might have been more about the collection of talent and Sean Payton helping those guys as opposed to individuals just being purely talented. And listen, that's what it's all about, is it's about having more than just the number one receiver. You've got to have the 2, the 3. You've got to have the offensive line to do it, the running backs. The running back room is probably not as deep as that group was at that point when they won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And they did have a really good offensive line as well. So the Broncos offensive line has to hold up its end of the bargain there. But I think if you get the right play from Russell Wilson, you could argue that they're close to that group.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the reason why we were all so excited last year was because on paper, it looked like a really good team.
Yeah.
And again, this year, on paper, it looks like a really good team. And the Broncos have done a really good job of dialing down hype, not talking much about expectations for the season, saying, hey, you don't win football games right now. We're judged based off wins and losses in the fall, that kind of thing. And but I do think that when you look on paper, there's really not a lot of just glaring weaknesses, And I think that what takes a team that's good on paper and then turns them good on the football field is sort of that mindset and the culture. And, hey, I'm playing for my teammates, and I'm willing to go the extra step, and I'm willing to sacrifice this and that. And when a whole team and a whole unit is buying in and is just it's humming, I think that's what takes talent on paper and makes it good on the field. And that didn't come together for the Broncos last year. And I think that there were a lot of injuries. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why that happened. But right now on paper, this looks like a really good wide receiver core. If Jerry Jeudy can just be that breakout star, gosh, this is going to be a really good – Russell Wilson's going to have a lot of weapons here. And if Javonte Williams can come back healthy, he's going to have a ground game with Samaje Perine there too they're going to be able to really run the football. And so the key to me is if Russell Wilson can get back to the player we know he can be, I don't think there's any limit to this Broncos team if you get that kind of production.
Yeah, and I think the one thing about the Saints, that first Saints team, is that they've been together a few years. You've had Sean there a few years.
3 years.
It's not like Reggie. That wasn't Reggie Bush's first season. It's not Colston's first season. It's not Breeze's first season. It took some time to develop that, and so I do think that this Broncos team could have the pieces it needs and still need a couple of years to fully gel and develop the right core and see how things all fit together. But
takes time.
But you're right. On paper, they do have that. When I look at the latter team, the one in 18 that probably should have gone on to win the Super Bowl.
Sometimes your best teams don't win at all.
Right. Man, Kamara, the amount of catches he had, the way he runs, and then Michael Thomas, back-to-back years with over 120 catches.
Yeah, I mean, they were
Michael
loaded.
Thomas was the Offensive Player of the Year the next year. I don't know if the Broncos, from those two guys in terms of their pure talent, and granted, I understand that it wasn't like they were. When was Michael Thomas drafted? Was he a later round guy?
No, I don't know. That's a good question.
Obviously, an Ohio State product.
That's wide receiver U these days. We obviously have Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out. Eric, I know that you're a big Marvin Harrison guy there. But yeah, I don't think that they don't have a player who's just like Alvin Kamara, who's just like a guy. You know what I mean?
Michael Thomas, second-round pick, 47th overall.
Yeah. I thought that he was a little bit.
So it wasn't like he was a top 10 guy.
Not a top 10.
Kamara's a third-round guy.
Yeah. But Kamara is a special player.
Very special.
That year in particular,
Unique.
he was really.
But he hasn't been, and I know he's dealt with some off-the-field stuff, some injuries. Hasn't been quite the same without Sean Payton. Michael Thomas obviously has dealt with injuries and has not been the same guy. And so you wonder, hey, are these guys great talents that with Sean Payton become exceptionally productive players?
Yeah.
And if there's one guy that falls into that category, it's Jerry Jeudy, right? Where, hey, this guy is remarkably talented. You can see it every time he's on the field. He's a great route runner. He gets open. He makes big plays. You're just like, I want a little bit more consistent, or like, I want to see him go to 1,500 yards. I want to see him catch 10 touchdowns. If Sean Payton can do that same, like give him the same boost that he gave a Kamara or a Michael Thomas,
he could be that
you
guy.
could be looking at a guy that next year people are like, man, Jerry Jeudy's one of the best receivers Sean Payton's had.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a little bit difficult to project, right? Because we don't know just how much of an impact a guy like Sean Payton could have, because I do think it can be very significant.
Yeah. I will say this, Eric, whenever I'm like sort of a man of the people.
Of course.
And so when I'm out and about and I'm just talking Broncos with friends or whoever,
Non-friends.
they just always talk about Sean Payton.
Yeah.
I think that Broncos country is really excited about Sean Payton.
Sure.
What he represents, what he's doing, like with the media and all, the whole picture of how he's come in here and sort of reshaped, what's happening, the way that he had the team working in the offseason, just a whole picture of what he represents and what he's brought to the Broncos. Fans are really encouraged by what they've seen so far.
Yeah, and listen, you want to be talking about what you think can fix your team and help your team. And so last year, everyone wanted to talk about Russell Wilson coming in here and what he could do to help this football team get back to the playoffs, win championships, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't go that way. This year, Sean Payton's coming in, and there's so many things like tangents that come off of Sean Payton being here. One is, can he help Russell Wilson get back to that place? Can he help the Broncos stop making mistakes that are costing them football games? Can he bring that accountability and discipline, et cetera, et cetera? Can he become the first coach to win a Super Bowl for two different franchises? I mean, that's why, I think there's so much interest in Sean Payton, is because he's the new addition that is the potential fix. It's not like, Mike McGlinchey might be a great right tackle who can be here for 5 years, but Mike McGlinchey is not going to fix this on his own.
The whole team. Yeah, the whole
Ben
thing.
Powers is not going to fix this on his own.
Yeah, the head coach touches
Sean
everything.
Payton can have a drastic, when I look at last year, Phil, and the team goes, 5-12, I think even if you just had a few breaks go one way or another, you could have been 8-9.
Yeah.
And that's not where you want to be, but it's a far cry from 5-12.
Yeah.
And so then I think, okay, well, if the breaks go your way and you have Sean Payton who keeps you from beating yourself and all this.
Pre-snap penalties,
now, like being prepared for a road game, learning how to go to a place like Buffalo and earn a win in a primetime game, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about, okay, I can see 10 and 11 wins, which is a significant jump, but to loop it back to what we're talking about, you've got a lot of offensive talent here. Now what can Sean Payton do with it?
Yeah. And that's going to be what we're all paying attention to throughout training camp, preseason, beginning of the year. What's different about how this team, how they carry themselves, and particularly Russell Wilson and how he plays. You know, because I think that the big question from last year, and it continues on into this offseason, was that a Russell Wilson issue last year, or was it a Nathaniel Hackett issue? Was it something else? That was a question that was going on all last year, all through the offseason, and now too is like, what do the Broncos have here, and what was the issue last year? And Sean Payton is the guy that they brought in to say, fix this,
right?
So I think there's a lot to be excited about, just based off of how things have gone on during the offseason program. But like the Broncos have done, dial down the expectations. Like, it's time to work. That's been the messaging from them, and we'll see what happens.
And we'll get a chance quickly to see how it works, because they're going to practice hard during training camp. They're going to play in. You're going to see Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton in the preseason.
Yeah,
and see them go against hopefully another team's number one defense for at least a little bit. And then you're going to see them. Listen, it's not going to click immediately, if I were to guess, and it's going to take some time to get better. But certainly last year we spent 6 or 7 weeks each week on this podcast saying, "When is it going to click? When is it going to click?"
Yeah,
and it became clear relatively quickly that, one, it wasn't going to click, and that it was abnormal that it wasn't doing that, because you saw other teams around the league with first-time head coaches or new head coaches have success a lot earlier. And so doesn't mean it's going to be perfect at the beginning of this year, but I do think you'll see a change faster that suggests, hey, Jerry Jeudy can be a star player in this league, or Cortland Sutton's back to being that 2019 type guy, or Javonte Williams is going to run over you again. Those sorts of things I think will become clear quickly, and excited to see that.
I don't know about you, Eric, but a couple of weeks ago during mandatory minicamp, that first practice when they were in the indoor, we were watching, they were going like full speed.
Yeah, they're going.
And I was like, whoa.
It's different than what we've seen.
Yeah, that was different. I mean, they were playing football.
Yeah.
I mean, the pads weren't on or anything like that, but they were playing.
They were going.
Yeah. And I was like, dang, these guys are getting after it a little bit. So it makes you excited to see what training camp is like.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely the competition level is going to be much higher.
Yes, for sure.
So that's our look at the offense. I mean, it's possible, Eric, that this is the most talented team that Sean's had to work with.
Yeah.
But that's projecting.
You got to go prove it. You got to go prove it.
Yeah. Because that 2018 team, they proved it. The numbers backed up some special. There were some special performances there.
Oh yeah.
And so, but Sean got the most out of those guys, and I think that it's possible he'll do the same this year.
I think what you can say for sure is the cupboard is not bare. There's a lot of talent here in Denver, and if Sean can help them reach that next step, the proverbial next step that he thinks is cliche. And I think we agree with, if he can help them do that, then yeah, you could look at this group at the end of the year and be like, man, they're a really good football team.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, let's say, like, if you're like a little kid and you're like kind of bored or something, and you open up your toy chest.
Yeah.
Sean's got some toys.
There's some toys in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to get bored.
No.
Or maybe like if you're like Ike and you're get bored playing some HP, switch it out for some 2K.
That's right.
He's got all the games.
Yeah.
Sean's got all the games.
He's got all the games. You can play for hours.
You don't get bored. No. You just switch it out. That's kind of how that's how I think about it.
I agree.
Sean likes these analogies, climbing the mountain top. Yeah, climbing up to the mountains. You don't want to fall back. Eric, the most injuries happen on the way down.
Because you're tired.
You're tired. You think it's easy. You kind of.
It's like most accidents, car accidents, happen within 5 minutes of your home.
Yeah, exact same idea. Same idea. So you don't want to.
We don't want any of that.
You don't want any of that.
You just want to play.
You want to keep going up.
Up.
What happens if you're at the mountaintop, kind of like the Denver Nuggets? What do you do?
Okay.
How do you keep?
It's been a week. Let's
is
move
there
on.
like another
Let's
mountain,
move on.
or how do you do that?
Climb up a bigger mountain, yeah.
Any shout-outs?
Oh, we're doing shout-outs.
Oh, well, are you?
We can do
you not wanna
shout-outs.
do
We can do shout-outs.
Maybe we don't have to do
shout-outs.
I guess I just am it's just natural.
Maybe
to
we
just
save
go
some
to-
shout-outs for next week.
I was just going to say I will shout out Liz Gerald.
Yeah, okay, that's good to do.
That's just sort of a
Have to. Kind of it's written into the
given.
written into the contract.
It's a given.
Yeah.
Yeah. The show really can't exist without that.
Ben Swanson,
But
anti-shout-out.
once again, not
anti-shout-out.
here. What do you think?
I'm worried about him.
Yeah, I don't know what happened here. I think some of these guys have from the Nuggets,
took
they've
off.
hired him to be like a private.
Oh, he's at the warehouse.
He's at the warehouse taking photographs.
Still.
Yeah.
That was last week he was there.
You can get lost in a warehouse.
That's right.
You know, you don't know. You make one wrong turn,
Yeah, number 94.
you're lost. So,
You ever been to a Ware's house?
DeMarcus, yeah, of course, yeah, of
you
course.
get lost in there.
I'm over
Swanson's
there.
at
It's
DeMarcus
huge.
Ware's house.
Where's his house? Yeah,
It's exciting for him.
DeMarcus Ware.
Gonna be honored.
Yeah, by the Broncos.
Hall of
That's kinda
Fame, yeah,
nice.
week
We
2
can
versus the
give him
Commanders.
a shout out there.
Shout out to him. Super
Yeah.
Bowl 33 team.
What do you think about it being week 2? I kind of like that.
Yeah, early, get him going.
Yeah. Other times the Broncos have done like this celebration a little bit later on. The big thing for me is just like lighting sometimes. You know, like when you do a
of
lighting,
course.
it's like an afternoon. You know, we need.
Like a light show.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want if it's light outside, it doesn't really work so much.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
And you know, everybody's still excited about the start of the season at that
Yeah,
point.
of course.
You know what I mean?
Maybe you get a big win over the Raiders in week 1.
Yeah,
Trying to start 2-0 for the first time in a while.
exactly. When was the last time they did a 2-0?
I think-
the Fangio. They started 4-0 that year, I think.
Fangio?
The end of Fangio, yeah.
Oh,
they
the
beat
end
the
of
Giants.
the end of Fangio. 3-0.
the last year.
3-0.
Were they 3-0?
Yeah.
So they did the Giants. They did the Jags.
Yeah, 3-0.
They did the 3-0, not the 4-0.
The Jets.
They did the Jets.
KJ Hamler got injured.
Oh yeah,
And then the Ravens smacked them around.
that's right. That's what happened.
There was beef.
Oh yeah,
The running.
yeah.
So,
We won't talk about it.
no.
All right, well, that does it for us. We'll be back next week. We'll read some comments next week.
Perfect.
We'll have some nice shout-outs.
fun.
Some good shout-outs next week. So, and maybe Ben Swanson will be back.
Who knows?
Who knows? That's going to do it for us then. For Aric DiLalla, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.